Hello, everyone. Welcome to Phil Yaeger's podcast, CPA Review and More. We are not talking about CPA Review today. We're talking about more. And we have a very interesting guest who I'll introduce momentarily. But let me just mention something if I can. I've mentioned many times that my wife is she has Parkinson's disease. And the only way they can do the research to find out what is causing this. It's a genetic problem, obviously, but the organization that really does research, besides the Parkinson's Foundation themselves, is the Michael J. Fox Parkinson's Foundation. So I ask you, if you would, all right, go to Michael J. Fox Parkinson's Foundation. And for those who don't know who Michael J. Fox is, he was in those Back to the Future movies. And he actually, I believe he got Parkinson's when he was very young, like 28, 29. And, he's a real advocate, raises a lot of money. And thank God there are people like him out there, all right, that actually help the organization. And they even come up occasionally with new medications. So we were told a few years ago that they were pretty close to finding maybe a cure or what would prevent it. All right, but that didn't happen. But they're still doing research. And hopefully, although my wife doesn't think so, hopefully they'll find some type of cure during her lifetime. They've done a lot with it. So with that, let me welcome you again. And I have with me my guest. By the way, this isn't we get guests from the United States, but usually from out of the country? No, all right? This is the third, I think you're the third gentleman, Shadrack, who has actually been outside of the US, all right? We actually did one for someone who was in Scotland. She was giving she was a guest speaker there, and I'm trying to remember the other place we went to. But anyway, Shadrack lives in Johannesburg, South Africa, okay? And this man, I'm telling you, I can't keep up with him. All right. He is a co-founder of the Coronet blockchain. We'll talk about that in a second. All right. And he's do you know you're in the top 1% post engagement? What does that mean?
That means that across LinkedIn's 800 million member community globally, I'm in the 1% in terms of when I put thoughts out there, leadership inputs. I'm among the 1% engagement, meaning my posts and updates are engaged in the 1% of the 800 million.
So how many people, after you put some type of, I guess you write something in LinkedIn about yourself?
Articles and posts, we are seeing about 500,000 a month actually interact. Really? And yes, that's the type of traffic I'm seeing to my desk, to my digital desk.
Wow. If I get 500 a month, I'm happy. But all of that, unbelievable, this man. And also, he's probably, and most people don't know this, he's the #1 snappy dresser, all right, in Johannesburg, South Africa, okay? I said to him, are you going out to play golf today? He really looks good. I like that color. Anyway, you have, how many viewers do you have on LinkedIn, by the way?
That follow LinkedIn, that follow me, it's approaching 33,000 now. It's approaching 33,000.
33,000.
Yes, and also with my co-founder, we are approaching 63,000 together.
Okay. And we'll talk about who follows you, but all right, let's talk about what you do basically. Yes. You are the co-founder of the Coronet blockchain, okay? Yes. Can you explain that to us in simple English?
Okay. Of course.
Go ahead.
Definitely. So my traditional background is actually in management consulting, and having served some time in corporate beyond my village days. I was born in the village. Beyond corporate, with my last role being with Deloitte, I then segued into management consulting. What does that mean? It meant that at my desk with my team, we had small, medium enterprises come to us, including multinationals, that sought to understand Africa when it comes to bringing products to market, projects to scale. So that's how I ended up in the blockchain sector, because we scaled one entity that I will unpack later that led to a bit of traction. And IBM actually gave us 2 funding tranches during COVID for us to do this one thing, to repair and rethink Africa's supply chains using blockchain.
Does that mean that whatever comes into the country, you pay for by blockchain? Is that what you pay for it? How does, explain to me how blockchain gets involved with you and your country.
Absolutely. So what that means is that for the benefit of the viewers and the listeners, traditionally, blockchain's early use case being Bitcoin, being more in finance and what they call cryptocurrency. Now, beyond crypto and beyond the early days of blockchain, now blockchain is moving into mainstream. What we are seeing is that now blockchain, which I'll unpack a bit on how that works, is now being utilized in use cases in supply chains, in land registry, in food tracking and tracing. So how that relates to me and the continent of Africa is that, for the benefit of the audiences, last year in January, there is a free trade agreement that was signed on the continent of Africa by 54 nations, including my home country, South Africa. That meant that the nations wanted to trade more with each other to increase the trade levels from the dismal 13-14% to a $450 billion in about 2030, 2035. Where does blockchain come in? Remember, I said that beyond finance, blockchain is very much involved in ensuring tracking and tracing of goods, of assets across a ledger. So the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is not really possible to be implemented fully without blockchain. So what we are seeing now is, through Coronet blockchain, we are among the front runners at the front line to ensure that African goods that are made in Africa, that are sold in Africa, across different sectors, they are one by one being moved into the blockchain, meaning across the supply chain, from the raw material to the processors, brokers, distributors, and the finished product. They are looking at the same ledger. They don't exist in silos anymore, because silos is bad for business, is bad for transparency.
Are you saying that any goods, services now in your country are, now when we think about blockchain here, we're talking about cryptocurrency, okay, which is now traded on, you show it actually, if you watch any of the finance shows like CNBC, they now show, of course, the Dow Industrial Average, they show the NASDAQ, the S&P, and also they now show cryptocurrency. Is that, all right? Now, you're using, correct me if I'm wrong, you're using cryptocurrency, all right, to buy goods that come into your country? Is that what you're doing?
That's a good question. And I would say that whilst cryptocurrency is being used to trade or exchange goods, that actually saw, just in Africa, to give the viewers and the listeners some insight, last year, Africa was the second highest volumes in terms of crypto transactions in the world outside of the US. I think we're looking at about $105 billion where goods were traded and just money exchange hands. But that's a one side of the blockchain. My firm, Coronet Blockchain, exists more on the non-crypto side of the equation, where we are using what's referred to as distributed ledger technologies in order to evolve supply chains from their siloed environment into more inclusive, where everybody can look at the same ledger. If this item here is moving across that ledger, everyone sees it. So cryptocurrencies are the currency implementation of blockchain. We are looking at the trade of goods and the exchange of goods to ensure provenance from origin to end user, to ensure quality consistency, quality assuring, and verification. That's our use case in blockchain, where we are, let's say we are cleaning up Africa's supply chains to ensure that some housekeeping and trust is restored to those supply chains.
Can you give an example? Would that be, do you have an
Yes,
example you can
I'll
give?
definitely give an example. I'm sure that our mainly American audiences, they enjoy a cup of coffee, be it Starbucks, be it other coffee houses or coffee brands. What they may not be aware of is what is the origin of that coffee. That's the first example I'm going to give. Number two, our American neighbors whom we love, they probably are quite used to, I think America is the largest ice cream consumption destination. What they may not be aware of is where does the raw vanilla pulps, where do they come from? Whether for ice cream or for baking. I'm going to touch on that. The last but not least example I will touch on is raw cocoa. Where does raw cocoa come from in order to evolve into either Belgian chocolate or any chocolate whatsoever? Now, coming back to Africa and blockchain, the East Africa Coffee Belt is what we call it. Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda, among others, is among the strong economic basins for the sending of raw cocoa beans next to Colombia out there and next to other emerging markets. But where the challenge is and why the need for blockchain is that the coffee farmers of East Africa, they end up with the raw side of the deal quite often. I mean, we went out there on a delegation last year where we got to engage the Ethiopian Prime Minister, His Excellency Abiy Ahmed. And we got to discuss with him how we are looking at deploying blockchain in his particular coffee, beef, and also dairy sectors. And on the coffee one, I'm not sure if the audience are aware, Phil, but currently coffee can retail for what? Anything from $3 to $8, depending on where you are buying it. But an Ethiopian coffee farmer is only going to get 1 cent. 1 cent on average out of every coffee cup that's sold out there. To say that that's unethical and unfair global trade will be an understatement, because farming coffee is no longer sustainable for East Africa coffee farmers who are actually farming it at a loss. And as a result, when we deploy blockchain, which is what we are working through, we're just ticking a few boxes and tying some loose ends. When we deploy it, we will be able to police or monitor or audit that coffee value chain to ensure that there are no unethical middlemen or brokers or trade financiers that are actually adding an inflationary effect onto that value chain, and they are siphoning value at the expense of those at the first mile of the raw material. And that's actually, you find that the price of coffee keeps going up, but the Ethiopian farmers or East Africa farmers are none the better. Blockchain reveals all the moving parts from the raw coffee planting and also the warehousing. Basically, blockchain follows that coffee bean until it becomes a coffee cup and is able to advocate for value being sent downstream and upstream. Currently, there's way too many silos, way too many moving parts, and way too many ledgers. So when we decentralize the ledger, we are ensuring that the weaker members of the value chain can as equally benefit as those C-suite executives that are really, capitalizing on the coffee trade. And on the West Africa, 80% of the world's raw cocoa actually comes from Africa. 80% of the world's raw ingredients for the chocolate comes from Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Nigeria. But with that being said, because of the manipulation of the movement of this chocolate ingredients, you find that it is beneficial more to the first economy countries that are actually producing and finishing the products more than it is for those poor raw cocoa farmers that cannot even afford a chocolate for their children. Last but not least, Madagascar alone as a country globally is responsible for more than 80% of the world's raw vanilla pulp. However, Madagascar remains poor. Madagascar remains embattled in poverty even now as they are considering their post-pandemic future. We are seeing a scenario where blockchain as a trust machine, as a track and traceable input, and as a truth machine is now leveling the play field for all members of the respective value chains that you are deploying into.
Farmers growing, let's say, cocoa, cocoa
Yes,
beans. Okay.
absolutely.
How would they,
Farmers are growing raw cocoa.
before blockchain, how were they paid? If I'm a farmer growing cocoa beans, all right,
Yes.
how was I paid before? Those
Good
coffee
question.
beans, can you tell me, let's go through the process.
Yes.
I grow the cocoa beans, okay?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Then they go to where? Processing?
Very good question. Now, they don't go to processing. I'm going to touch on the journey of those raw cocoa beans, and I'm going to actually add a twist. I'm going to touch on the maple syrup industry in Canada. But before that, let me come back to Africa. You see, I'm a farmer. I grow the raw cocoa beans. I go through the cycles. I cultivate. I am not even allowed to take my coffee beans to the market. What happens is there are some self-organized coffee unions in Africa. Those coffee unions, they act like consortiums on behalf of farmers, and they are the ones that deal with what we can call the coffee brokers, although they go by various names. It's the coffee brokers who've never set their foot on the farm that will actually come to Africa's shores. And mind you, there'll be about 4 to 12 brokers between the farm and the coffee union and the ship. So imagine Shadrack is sending his coffee to America, but already there's about 12 gentlemen that are not so gentlemanly that are actually siphoning value out of those raw coffee beans. Now on a ship, it goes out there for warehousing out of Africa. Africa is not such a big consumer of coffee per se by global standards, but is responsible for quite a significant raw material forwarding. The same applies to raw cocoa. So there are way too many middlemen. By the time it touches down in America, while it's out in the sea, it will be traded by so many hands while it's floating out there. But before it hits the warehouses, then it enters the processing, then pre-processing, post-processing, then the packaging, and then of course, it's a free-for-all for all these coffee brands that are actually more like coffee chain brands to now procure those. And then here is the kicker. Then those coffee chains will go like, we source ethically. But if they source ethically and there's way too many ledgers in the room, how do we know which ledger they are following? The same applies to those that are sourcing, earth metals that end up in our automotives, or those earth metals that end up as coltan. Coltan is a raw material that ends up in our phones and our devices. So without a decentralized, see-through supply chain, no brand in the world can actually, with an immutable layer around their statement, to say they're either indulging in ethical fashion, ethical tech, or ethical coffee supply chains.
I understand that the farmers here are being taken advantage of by these brokers. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. That's correct.
Now, the question is, I'm here in Maryland, United States of America. Why do I care what's happening in your country?
That's a good question. So for a number of reasons, while centered on that coffee, and on the Canada side, there's also some maple syrup self-organized unions that are actually manipulating the price of maple syrup. More on that later. Why should you care as a consumer or one who loves enjoying coffee? Whether I'm enjoying wine, whether I'm enjoying coffee, the ethicality of how it was sourced, it's very good for me as a consumer. Even my ethical fashion. Why is it? It's because number one, we are wanting to live in a world or a future where human rights are not violated in the process of either sourcing my jacket or sourcing my wine or sourcing my coffee. The reason why that is so is because there's that age-old principle that's very old school that you reap what you sow. So we don't want to be sowing seeds that are contaminating any supply chains we do business with unethical trading conduct, and we tend the other way. Because after all, at some point, coffee might either dry up as more and more farmers are shutting down and leaving the farming trade and are using their land for other crops. Now the coffee is gone. We will go back to that book, Who Moved My Cheese? So we don't want to ask later on who moved our coffee cup, because we didn't notice as responsible consumers that responsible consumption begins with us, not the mega players in the value chain who will more than glad prioritize profit on their books more than ethical trade.
Doesn't Starbucks have their own growers who grow their coffee? or they buy it from these farmers?
Interesting that you say that, because Starbucks, among other coffee chain players, they have been, and they're not the only ones, I must admit, even in fashion. Ethical fashion has been a thing for more than a decade now. We source ethically, we trade ethically, we pay our coffee farmers equitably. But here's a question that I put out to Starbucks. How can you assure us as the consumers, because I go to Starbucks as well, how can you assure us as the consumers with a bulletproof statement that you are sourcing from specific farmers, from a specific location, through a specific set of trade rules? Because when you have too many ledgers, too many silos, anything happens whereby there are some, let's call them rogue coffee bags that are sipped into your supply chain and you yourself would not know. So unless it's immutable on the blockchain, unless it's decentralized, if me as a Starbucks client has to ask, where did this cup come from? Where did that coffee come from? And I actually have to go through maybe 10 different steps or 20 steps to find out, I'm going to give up on the way. I'm going to give you an example with Walmart, who actually developed their food, food traceability with the same technical partner we are using to build and finalize Coronet. Walmart had to find out with the food producers and supply chain players where does, to secure provenance from origin, which farm, which region, which items ended up on Walmart shelves. Why? They were not really looking at ethical sourcing, even though that's a spin-off. They were trying to future-proof Walmart from incurring losses with food recalls and food contaminations, because now you don't know which batch of beef was contaminated, which batch of fruit. Now they reduced the tracking of where a parcel of mangoes, just an edible lunch parcel of mangoes, where it came from. They reduced that finding out from 2 weeks of a laborious search to just 2.5 seconds. So in 2.5 seconds, you can actually interact with the QR code and it will reveal to you where those mangoes come from. That's the type of best practice we are bringing to other value chains here on the continent, so that transparency and ease of doing good business, sustainable business, can become an everyday reality, not just a fancy gadget for Walmart.
The students graduate college here, and they may be accounting majors, finance majors, economics majors. All right. And I'd be listening to this and I'd say, all right, well, this is really an interesting thing that's happening, because yes, the farmers are getting really taken advantage of. All right. But I'm not going to end up in Johannesburg, South Africa. And tell me why should I know this? I mean, let's assume I want to become a consultant, a management consultant. All right. Because that's a big area now. Advisory services. Okay. Now, in order to do that, a lot of people go for they become CPAs. All right. Maybe they become chartered accountants in your country. All right.
Yes.
And then they get some type of niche and go into that area as consultants. All right. Now, let's assume that's the case. I want to do that. All right. Where am I ever going to come in contact with your organization? Because people are selfish. They don't really worry about your farmers. That's really it, isn't it?
You're quite right.
In a perfect world, maybe they would say, "Oh my, Starbucks makes all these profits." All right. Or we have Seattle. I don't know if we still have Seattle coffee. All right. But honestly, and I hate to say this, Americans say, "What do I care that the people who are growing the beans are getting 1 cent?" Is it 1 cent you said?
Yes, 1 cent. 1 cent.
All right. And who's making the most money? The brokers? Or
the brokers
is it Starbucks?
And the chains. Yes.
Tell me, the farmer grows it, okay?
Yes.
It sounds like he gets the least amount of the money from the grow. Right. All right. Now, then, all right, we have these brokers, right? Who are supposed to represent the farmers.
Absolutely.
All right. Do they it doesn't sound like they really represent the farmers.
No, they don't. They don't. They are more in a cartel dynamic.
Okay. So
Yes.
after the brokers, take the coffee beans, whatever they do, where does it go from there? Where does it go from there?
Goes on a ship. It goes straight to the ship.
Okay. Well, then you have the shipping companies. All right. Hey,
Absolutely.
during this pandemic, God, the shipping companies' revenues have gone way up.
Yep.
All right.
Supply chain shocks.
All right. So then the shipping company gets a chunk of the money. All right.
Yep.
And then, all right, it goes to a specific, for example, coffee beans. All right. We have the farmer, we have the broker, we have the shipping company. All right.
Yes.
Now, where does the shipping company? They pick it up, right? And where do they ship it? All over the world?
It will dock. It will dock at the coffee hubs of the world, be it Netherlands, Germany, America. It will dock according to where demand is, including China, wherever coffee is consumed. But the most premium locations are areas like Dubai, America, and Europe. Those are the premium coffee hubs. China is coming on the grid a bit on the coffee side, even though China ships other materials from Africa.
So when
such
these,
as
when these shipping companies pick up the beans and ship them, and they get to their destination, wherever they're going, all right? Where, all right, are these different countries have representatives there to buy? Tell me how that works.
What do you call it? There is a dynamic called micro supply chains, meaning an entity like Starbucks is so sizable that it actually runs its own micro supply chain. It's not necessarily sourcing from external brokers. It's got its own internal brokers. So it depends whether we're dealing with a chain coffee house like Starbucks, or we are dealing with an emerging or mid-size coffee brand like the alternative others. So it will depend whether they're running their own micro supply chain or they're shipping from a middleman of a middleman. And when it docks, then it gets distributed across the coffee brand. So that's coffee. But you asked a very great question. You said, if you're a CPA graduate or a chartered accountant, why should you care? There's a reason why you should care, not necessarily about the coffee, even though that could help you to through your studies. You shouldn't necessarily care only about where the coffee comes from. Here's why you should care about blockchain if you're entering the finance field. You see, the finance field is right now undergoing reforms around the fourth industrial revolution, whether the furniture is being moved around by artificial intelligence or by blockchain, but there's some housekeeping happening. What does that mean for you as a new entrant to the industry or as a seasoned player in the industry? Here's what it means. Let's pause a little bit. In the good old days, accounting used to be done on a physical ledger, but maybe due to fire and due to other things, the industry segued into spreadsheets. That's a bit of a reform within the sector. Now, spreadsheets were also a bit cumbersome. Email them to me, I email them to you. Then the industry segued into software as a service, meaning your enterprise, your ERP, all these big softwares run by SAP and others, they were enabling especially large enterprises to more consistently be able to handle large volumes of kind of like audit conduct from accounting and audit. Now we are at a point where there are just so many moving parts across software as a service and ERP systems that if you look in our rearview mirror, there has been all types of scandals that have been hitting the accounting profession. Even back in the Enron days and this Watergate and Oilgate, all these gates and all these scandals, they are not without the audit profession especially dropping the ball, saying the books are this way instead of the books being that way. The only reason why there's still some blind spots or that can be manipulated or exploited by the powers that be. And look, there are not many people. The finance industry has got some great people, but when a few rotten apples start to give the industry a bad name, then perhaps the deployment of blockchain at large scale, where the books are not going to be cookable anymore. I know that's not an English word, where the books are going to be immune to manipulation and the books are going to be immune in the best interest of shareholders and in the best interest of the public. So I think that the audit profession particularly needs to be rescued from human manipulation and too large a room for human involvement, whereby man and machine have to work side by side without displacing one another in the best interest of the reforms and ethical conduct of the industry. So whether you're talking coffee or you're talking ethics, blockchain as a leveling of the playing field is really coming to a cinema near you.
So blockchain has its own code of ethics?
Blockchain is a vehicle that helps to implement existing code of ethics by collapsing silos into one decentralized ledger so that the regulators can see the same ledger, whereas shareholders and exco and various tiers of the profession can see the same ledger without people hogwashing any part of the ledger at any given moment. So blockchain itself is not the messianic rescuer of the profession, but blockchain provides the field where different players can actually hold each other accountable on one decentralized platform rather than all these silos that exist across the world that gives us blind spots and also some ceiling to what we can do with our ethics.
How did you, tell me, when you went to college, what was your major in college?
You know, I was actually in communication and strategy. And when I went into what do you call it, into corporate, what occupied my desk all the time was bringing projects to market and scaling products. That actually put me into the firing line of what is playing out today as a muscle memory. I had to engage a lot of stakeholders. I had to get a lot of buy-in across different silos where people did not necessarily like each other or did not necessarily speak the same language. But because they had common objectives, I was able to show them that, gentlemen, ladies, we're actually on the same pathing, never mind at different altitudes, but we are going in that direction. That's why in my consulting days in corporate, I was able to move a project with a team that was amazing from a zero balance sheet to $300 million US, thanks to securing stakeholder buy-in at various levels within 36 months.
Who trained you? I mean, this is, always question comes up. Well, this is great. It's very interesting what he's doing, but it sounds like you were sitting at desks and they would bring over these projects and you would have to do the strategies. And but where did you learn? It's like, I don't want to call this a trade, but how did you gather your knowledge? I mean, is this being done? Well, we know that blockchain, cryptocurrency is, yes, becoming a large part of US. All right.
Yes.
But the question is this: when I ask someone in cryptocurrency, the people in the United States, all right, how do they learn it? Is it taught in the colleges? All right. Who trains these people? That's the whole thing. A lot of people are totally intimidated by a new field, like,
Yes.
All right. And a lot of the universities are not equipped to teach what you have learned. All right.
Yes. Yes.
How does
question?
If I decide I want to do what you're doing, tell me what I have to do.
That is a good question. Sometimes I'm gonna use what do you call it? I'm gonna use this scenario. Across Africa, they have a tendency to affectionately refer to me as the blockchain baron of Africa. I'm not sure why they do that, but they do. And what I often tell them is that it took 38 years for the blockchain self that I've become to be in the making. Why I say that is even before college, even before corporate, and even before blockchain itself, I am a villager at heart. My village upbringing is what helped to shape my worldview, because we can't speak about learning a new technology if our worldview is actually contrary to adapting to new environments. If our worldview or our preference or our persona is actually counter transformation in any kind. So back in the village, maybe some of our American folks, when they grew up, they would go to the fridge, fetch the food, they'll go to the cupboard, fetch breakfast, whip something together. There was no fridge for me. There was no cupboards for me. I was the very last of Africa's sustenance farmers who lived off the ground in my generation. So what that did is that it put in a muscle memory of problem solving, of leadership. From as young as 5, I was hunting for breakfast. So what that does for you when you are a hunter at 5 years, and your KPIs or key performance indicators will determine whether you eat that morning or you go hungry, that kind of like gives you a different kind of training, more in your personality and your worldview. So that's one. And of course, I got to milk the cattle. I got to make my own food from the farm level to my dinner table. I saw that supply chain. So I could connect dots from that. Then you fast forward to corporate. I was thrown in the deep end. I was left out there. I didn't just wait on the desk for this strategy opportunities to arrive. I had to sometimes look for them. I might have begun at the desk, but it was not. And this is a rule for all innovators that don't want to go the route of Nokia. I had to leave my desk and go down into the grassroots and figure out, why is there such a collision path between my private sector colleagues and the public sector government officials and ministers and these powerful people? Why can't they get along? So I had to leave my desk and get out there and fold. I had to leave my jacket aside and get involved in all these spats. And that's where the diplomat in me.
Why don't they get along? Why don't they get along?
They don't get along because I think maybe there's also some ego dynamics that are happening there. There's also a protecting of, is this my project? If it's not my project, I'm not supporting it. I'm not signing it off. But fortunate for me, where I was born, I was not just a villager, but I was born at the intersection of 3 countries that became states. So I was born speaking all the 11 official languages of my region. I was born interacting, and that was normal. I thought everyone grew up like that. So when I was in corporate, stakeholder engagement, stakeholder mapping was what I was wired to do. So everybody needs to engage in those communication mappings in any profession, because you will need to look at the future of work as a more connected future. The silos are coming down. You are in the US, I'm in South Africa, but we are co-creating value for the audiences of CPA. And that's what the future of work belongs to. You could have looked at some fascinating things on your desk there, but you actually stepped out, and in the best interest of the industry, you thought, maybe I need to bring in that gentleman from Joburg to really stimulate conversation in the right direction, so that he doesn't maybe have all the answers, but it helps us to ask the right questions in the context of the 4th industrial revolution that is unfolding all around us and is coming to a cinema near us, whether we are ready or not. So that's a bit of the 38 years of me in blockchain in the making, adapting to change. And I must mention, my ex-colleague from Deloitte ended up with a big problem on my desk in my consulting days. And that problem, when I solved it, it got a lot of heads turning, and it saw IBM fund us to go into blockchain, because we basically went into a part of the industry that I think even angels don't dare to tread there, is the informal sector. I was very comfortable in corporates. I was working in the mainstream economy, very, very structured environment. And then when she was retrenched, she came to me and my consulting practice now, and she asked my team to say, please, guys, I'm selling human hair extensions out of my handbag. I know that you are black belts. Those are the words you use. You are black belts when it comes to scaling products and brands. Could you help out? Can you help me out? And I said, oh my goodness, I don't want to go there because we haven't done anything in the informal sector since my village days, and I don't want to fail. I don't know about the audiences, but I don't want to fail. But long story short, my wife and co-founder nudged me a bit, and we took on the project. Within 36 months, we scaled her survivalist entity out of the handbag into 4 branches, 2 of them into 5-star hotels, and we moved it from $500 to $2 million. She now employed 40 staff. And I must admit, I was blown away when I saw that the quality of life for her and her employees have changed. They were sending their kids to better schools, and they were building their parents homes out of shacks, out of mud huts into homes. And that's when I remembered, this is why I love Africa so much. This is why I get the fulfillment to make someone's day and change or edit someone's trajectory. So it's not about blockchain. I think it was Lance Armstrong who wrote the book. It's not about the bike. So for me, it's not about the blockchain. It's about the outcomes of a better connected industry and an ethical trade corridor, and also a more accountable measure that does not leave the burden of trust in human hands. That's what it's about.
How many businesses do you own?
Currently, we have about 3.
Now, when you say we, you're talking about you and your wife? Oh,
yes. So me and my wife and our immediate Coronet blockchain team, 80% of our time, I think it's the Pareto principle. Pareto principle is that 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time, we are either going through the build sprints with our IBM technical teams across 5 countries. So we are just tweaking and building what we call a smart horse in blockchain. It's a digital e-commerce platform for Africa. So 80% of the time, we are focusing on that. But the other 20% of the time, we are traveling across the continent. We are doing diplomacy. We are also consulting incoming companies, whether they're in blockchain or not, but they are looking for growth. People, they want growth and they want future resilience. So we have that 20% in our Pareto principle rule where we still consult, because consulting is what we love, and helping to grow and scale entities, whether SMEs or startups or any entity, is what we love doing. So we've kept that leg room for our consulting passion.
Is South Africa ahead of the United States when it comes to blockchain?
I would say not. Whilst our cryptocurrency volumes are up on the consumption side, but on the business side, I would say that even though there has been some pushbacks with Ripple and other blockchain tensions on US soil, but those tensions are still seeing the emerging of what we call blockchain unicorns at a much faster rate than in Africa. Let me give you some numbers. Of the 900 unicorns that exist globally, only 9 of those are in Africa.
Explain what a unicorn is.
Oh, yes. So a unicorn is any startup or any company that has gone past a $1 billion valuation. So Africa is not producing enough of those, but we are changing that. So the US is still leading. I think US is home to more than 400 unicorns, some of them in blockchain, some of them in fintech. So Africa is playing catch up on the production side, but on the consumer side, Africa is the second destination for cryptocurrency volumes by trade or transaction.
Do you do a lot of, do you go to the United States a lot, traveling, dealing with businesses there? Or is everything done where you are in Johannesburg?
It's quite interesting. A large volume of our transactions, we see US businesses flying into the country, European businesses, post-Brexit. We actually get a number of delegations flying in to our country, to South Africa, and actually flying with us out of South Africa into the continent of Africa as a gateway into the continent. So I would even say 95%. We have a lot of businesses flying in, because most of them seek to understand Africa better and then grow as using Africa as a leverage. But we are quite open to travel whenever we get assignment to touch down in the US. We had one call to come through to Washington in 2020. Actually 2. We had to go to Silicon Valley, we had to go to San Francisco for a mega conference with IBM, and also just add value there with some businesses in the pipeline. That was March 2020, but we had to put that off. And we also had
to go. Were you part of that we?
We had to fly out. But we had to amend. We had to amend that travel because of the lockdowns kicking in. Right, and we also had a request to come through to Washington to really outline to some government stakeholders the implications of blockchain for the US and Africa trade relationship. And we had to put that off. But as nations are reopening and retooling, we are expecting more travel, even to the US and beyond. So we are on the lookout for requests in that regard.
Where are you on the list of the top 10 richest people on Forbes?
You're reminding me of Rockefeller. I think he was asked how much money is
Now, I want
enough,
you to
right?
know that a lot of people you're talking to don't even know who Rockefeller are.
Oh, yes.
They would. Who would be the Mark Zuckerbergs
Yes, yes.
or
Oh, interestingly, you mentioned Mark Zuckerberg because my former neighbor, let me put this politely. My former neighbor, Elon Musk, who was born just not that many kilometers from where I grew up in the big city. He grew up in Pretoria in South Africa. I grew up in the what do you call it, Pretoria rural. So that's where I grew up. Let's say my former neighbor is a lot higher up on the rich list than I am at the moment. And I'm okay with that because he's flying our South African flag in Texas, in the US, where he has resettled now after he left Silicon Valley.
Would you? I mean, if I see, I'm trying to visualize this. You grew up in a village. I mean,
Yeah.
is this a village? How many people were in that village?
I can actually tell you. This village was home to, I'm not going to count the household. I'm going to count the football fields. It was about the size of maybe 15 football fields. And then we had our pharmacy, our pantry, our food pantry, our go-to. I call that the forest. We had a forest that was everything to us. We got our medicines from it. We got our meals from it. We got wood from it. Our energy, we got it from it. That forest was the size of, I would say, roughly about 160 football fields. So it was quite sizable as a value chain for this modest, tiny village where things are done. Phil, I was actually using donkeys as my mode of transport. I'm hoping that is explaining how this village was. It's almost like, I'm trying to remember that religion. In America, they wear black and they separate. I'm not sure if They wear hats. They wear this long hats.
Yeah, I know you're talking about. I remember.
They believe in staying alone and separate. And
not Amish people?
Amish, yes. So I lived like an Amish. I lived like an Amish in my upbringing. And instead of horses, I was a few notches down the Amish village chain. I was using donkeys.
Did you have electricity?
I didn't have electricity growing up. Only when I was just about to turn 12 or 14, electricity came. But even when it came, it came to select homes in my village. And that's when I left for the big city. So I lived most of my childhood. If I put my hand like this in the dark, I couldn't see it. That's how dark it is. Whereas big cities are talking about city glow and all these things. I was in total darkness, but I'm glad because inside was a candle that was a beacon, and that was a beacon of hope. And today it's still glowing, not for me, but for the continent, actually.
What was your father? What did your father do for a living?
My dad, I call him a magician. I actually have a tale of two dads. One dad who was my biological, he was never around. And then the dad who actually adopted me was actually the one who was also never around, but he was going to the big city. He was a migrant laborer. So he would go away for large extended periods of time, which actually also jolted me into early childhood independence because he was just away. And my mom actually, who raised me and my four brothers, she was a super hustler. She was entrepreneurial. At any given moment, she was juggling multiple businesses. And she's the one who actually sowed seeds of me becoming a strategist as well, because she would start businesses and she'll outsource them to me. By the age of 9, I was actually running about 5 businesses on her behalf. They were very small.
Normal. This is not normal in your country that, a 9-year-old would run 5 businesses or something. I mean, you were the exception, weren't you, to the rule? Or
I would say I was the exception to the rule at the time, but I didn't know it. I didn't know it that a 9-year-old could be handling 5 businesses. It was my normal. I was just seeing myself help out mom. And I didn't know that in helping her out, I would learn stewardship. I would learn submission to authority. I will learn being accountable, being transparent. Think about it, Phil. If my mom is coming to do the books, I was not thinking, how can I hoodwink my way? I was thinking, I better be all... I better lay everything bare because my mother is my shareholder, is my everything. She's my how do I put it? She's my hero. So I wouldn't betray my hero. I didn't know that in learning that later I will navigate corporate politics better because I just put my head down and delivered goods, and I allowed my results to speak for themselves. I didn't know that's what I was learning. I just thought every kid around the world grows up being told, okay, fetch water, fetch wood. When you are done, run that store over there, run that camera business. I thought that was another day on the planet.
Well, how many Americans are coming to your country to work in? I mean, you have a lot of Americans who are expatriates coming here and working here.
Interesting you say that because where I am now in Johannesburg, in this physical location, I work and live in a place called Sandton, which is regarded as the richest square mile on the entire continent of Africa. So where I am, just in that direction of that wall, about less than 2 kilometers, is the US Embassy. So I actually live quite near the US Embassy in Johannesburg. So we do have interesting trade engagement and trade relations with the US. And we also, I'm going to give you an example. Recently during COVID, when COVID hit and what do you call it, President Biden was actually implementing some reforms after Mr. Donald Trump left the office, one of the things that had happened is that the US actually imported quite a number of our truckers and a number of our agricultural workers, because we are among the best in the world, especially in the continent. So not only are US citizens coming through as work experts and service professionals, but we are also seeing US bring in, especially agricultural extra pair of hands, because our farming is in the muscle memory at a commercial level now for generations. So there is that trade synergy between the US and South Africa, and also between the US and Africa. Maybe that's where maybe the tensions between the US and China are kind of like getting a bit of intensity, because both China and the US have identified Africa as their next tier of focus. So it's the next frontier for those that want to maintain that number one position.
The average person does not know that. You're saying that, how many people are Americans who come there, and how many people are Americans who set up businesses in your country? Or are they representatives of American companies? All right. What's the market like for US?
Quite interesting.
Investing in your country.
That's a good question. South Africa, particularly, has been home to US multinationals from as far back as the 1980s and the 1990s. The very company that gave us 2 funding tranches, IBM, which is just about a kilometer in that direction from where I'm sitting, is an American firm. Your HP, there's many American tech companies that are not only sending representatives, but they call South Africa home, just like how they've established their home elsewhere. So in technology, in farming, we've got, our agriculture sees a lot of seed, innovation and R&D companies. They call South Africa home. So South Africa as an economy sees about, 20 million visitors a year. A certain percentage of those are actually business tourists. They are coming for conferences, but a number of them, I still have friends that used to stay in South Africa for about 5 or 10 years. Now they've moved back to the US due to family commitments. So South Africa really has got a presence of US citizens and also US entities that call South Africa home. It's quite a good environment of doing business because of our policies that actually help South Africa to fare better than the US actually. During the 2008 crisis, our policies were a lot more resilient, and we didn't have the Lehman Brothers and other dynamics because we were a lot more stricter, more stricter than anyone on the continent. So South Africa has got its own islands of US communities, if I can put it that way, that I'm glad to call my neighbors.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry I'm keeping you from your chauffeured limousine outside.
No, it's all good. You are so kind.
No, it's I'm just trying to think, first of all, I've been to South Africa. In fact,
Yep.
since the pandemic, I haven't been any place. But
I understand.
I often wonder, I mean, they're beautiful. We went to the Fiji Islands once,
Yes,
and typical Western American, we stayed at this, you're driving up to the hotel, and the village is like, it looks terrible, such poverty, couldn't understand. And then all of a sudden this hotel appears, beautiful hotel, and then we took a tour to Fiji, and they picked up this woman along the way, and she was our tour guide. Right now, you have to understand. Here is Philip Yaeger, brought up in the New York City area, all right, who doesn't understand how these people live. So when we were coming back from whatever she did, I said to her, "Well, what are you doing tonight? Are you going to be watching television? What are you going to do?" She says, "No, we don't have a television. We're going to sit around the fire and sing songs." Wow. And I said, "You don't have a TV set? I mean, this is terrible." I said. and then this was funny. I said to her, "You know who Johnny Carson is? Do you remember? I don't know if you get him there. Johnny Carson was a big talk show." So I turned to her and I said,
"The nightlife, yes."
Yeah, I said, "Do you know Johnny Carson?" And my wife said, "Stop asking me stupid questions." All right. And I said to her, "Have you ever seen a tall building?" She said, "No." What? And I'm describing this to her. Like and I think the people who watch this, they're probably having a lot of trouble relating to this. And my next question is, people are moving all over. For example, if I had a choice of moving out of the States, I would love to live in Amsterdam for 6 months or a year. Okay.
Yeah.
Now the question is, all right, would I want to live in Johannesburg, and why? Why would I want to live there?
Very good question. Very good question. Johannesburg, and particularly what's called the northern suburbs basin, which is a little bit, I think Johannesburg, the basin where I'm at, is the largest man-made forest in the world, meaning the amount of trees that were planted here makes this a green belt of Johannesburg. So not all Johannesburg is green, but where I am, it's green. And also, we are actually an economic hub for a $3.9 trillion US continent. We do have our challenges, I must admit, Phil, because I think it was in 2020 or 2029 when South Africa, not just Johannesburg, South Africa won the championships that I'm not proud that we won them, of the most unequal, of the most income inequality country in the world. So one of the reasons why I'm passionate about blockchain is because we can't have the gap between the poor and the rich widening. Right. I mean, if the rich are doing the right things, good for them, bravo. But if the rich are actually siphoning value and gatekeeping value, and through cartels and anti-competitive behavior, they're denying the seat at the dinner table for the poor, then that's where blockchain as an equalizer needs to be in there. So yes, we do have some challenges. We do have some crime elements that we are still dealing with, but it's nothing that makes us a war zone. However, as a gateway into Africa, I'm going to do some numbers because we have a finance environment. In 672 Saturdays from today, at this moment, it will be the 1st of January 2035, and the population of Africa is gearing to double by the 1st of January 2035 to more than 2 billion. So the amount of positive chaos and opportunities that is ushering in for any industry, be it finance, be it waste management, be it supply chain or food security, one might want to have a presence here on the continent. And when you look at policy and the ease of doing business, you may want to look at Johannesburg as a place both to live. I mean, we've got golf courses here, we've got sports. We are nowhere near perfect, but you could live, play, and work here and and segue your way into the continent and back, because this is a comfortable launch pad. And we've got Cape Town, which is like a paradise on its own. So yeah, we are very well positioned as a gateway into the continent and back, and also to accommodate for family, live and play on the recreation side.
You know what's happening in our country is one of the big issues is income inequality.
Absolutely.
But I don't think it's anything like the income inequality in your country. Am I correct?
Wow. Look at that. Look at that.
Really, it sounds like the income inequality in your country is really, really bad. Where
it's quite bad. I can give you the numbers. Around how do I put it? Around 20% of the population in South Africa tends to control 80 to 90% of the resources or the income. So now that leaves the 80% of the inhabitants to only share among themselves the leftovers of the 10 to 20%. That's not the Africa we want. And that is not because of hard work, because what's funny, I had this discussion that I was part of. They said, oh yeah, poor people are lazy, poor people are not working. And one of the people in the room said, listen, when you are enjoying your coffee in the morning, who woke up at 4 a.m., at 3 a.m. to actually bake that fresh bread and make you that coffee? Is the poor. So it's not that the poor are not working harder. Sometimes the poor are not afforded the same opportunities that the A-list elite are actually afforded. Better education, better schools, better opportunities, and the whole cycle repeats itself. So we want to use the equalizer and the trust machine to really lower the barriers to entry, so that if you are best at what you do, your product can be good enough to be brought to market without you being barred at the entrance with a whole lot of quality assurance questions. No, your organic is not organic enough. Your vegan is not vegan enough. What nonsense. If we were to use Bureau Veritas, SGS, ISO standardizations, then maybe you won't even afford that. But blockchain, we are democratizing access. Maybe not now, Phil, maybe not tomorrow, but in a half a decade or more, we might start seeing the tide turn in favor of the majority for the sustainable development goals.
One last question. Is your country having a problem with getting people to work for companies? You're aware of what's going on here in the States. We got like, I don't know how many millions of jobs out there that need to be filled, and people are just walking away, all right, from their jobs. If they don't like what goes on, they walk away. All right. That's not the way it is in South Africa, is it?
Phil, out of all due respect, I call those first world problems. Out of the goodness of my heart, I call those first world problems, because us, even though we are a developing economy and we are no longer a third world country, we are quite developed. We are seeing, just in between 2020 and 2021, 1 million hospitality and restaurant sector jobs were wiped off, meaning people lost their jobs because of the hard lockdown.
Yes.
So if anything, we have an oversupply of quality talent, and we've got, we've got oversupply and we've got lesser demand. So as economies are retooling, some of the things that we are prioritizing through blockchain, because if blockchain can't do that, then I don't want it. Blockchain as a democratization to create job opportunities and to also enable companies to grow, because when companies grow, naturally they employ. Governments don't create jobs. The day governments create jobs, maybe I'm going to stop what I'm doing and apply for a job that the government has created. Governments don't create jobs. Entrepreneurs that are enabled by technology and they are capacitated through policy and other means and through innovative mindset, they create jobs when they grow. So the biggest challenge that Africa has is, how do we evolve informal sector entrepreneurs into the formal economy, because informal economy jobs are not sustainable? And how do we put more entrepreneurs into that boxing ring of the economic arena, so that when they're in there, whether they fail and wake up, more jobs will be created? So that's what's a priority on my desk on a daily basis. help more people to go into industries, and also remove barriers where people that were not allowed in those industries can be allowed, so that the industries can change and they don't become a big boys club. That's what I'm facing daily.
The American Institute of CPAs here in this country, we're now starting to realize CPAs do more than just books, all right? And in 2 years, they want to change the exams so that people who are going into IT, that will be one form, all right? People want to go into cryptocurrency, that's another form. So they're trying to keep up with what's going on.
Yeah. I love that. It reminds me of the MBA, the MBA era, when the masters of what they call it, business administration, from being a general MBA into a specialist MBA, whereby you could have an MBA in supply chains, you could have an MBA in finance. So I'm seeing that the CPA sector is moving towards adapting and repositioning itself to equip leaders of the future, and that's a brilliant move.
I think you ought to open up a school. Do you have any time? I'd be your dean, the dean of the School of Business.
I'm going to take you up on that. I'm going to take you up on that. If I even dare say you will be my Dr. Phil, I will dare take you up on that.
I'll be your doctor. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I take that as a compliment. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
But you better grab me soon. I'm turning 77 this year.
You don't say. You know what? I think I should send you a little bottle so that you can put in there whatever anti-aging that you're on, because it looks like a closely guarded family secret. Please send me some. Send me some.
How old are you? What are you, 38? How old are you?
I'm 38. I'm 38. I'm actually, by numbers, I'm just shy. I'm just less than 1,400 Saturdays from blowing candles off my 70th birthday.
1,400 Saturdays.
1,400 Saturdays, just shy of that.
Well, Shadrack, if you ever get to the DC area, you will be my guest for dinner. I would look, I actually could talk to you another 2 hours, but
I would love that. I will take you up on that.
But anyway, I'm not sure we got to the main point of what you were doing, but I hope we gave people some idea of what's going on with the blockchain in your country. And it is a fairly new area. I mean, we don't have a lot of people in that. I've had guests who are into cryptocurrency who teach, I forget his name. He teaches at a college in New York, Lehman College. Sean, do you know what I'm talking about? He's really into cryptocurrency. He's a CPA, and I had him on, and he's really getting into that stuff. And
I'm going to look him up. I'm making it.
Sean, I wish I could remember his name. Sean, you know what? I will send to you. Do you have my email address?
Yes, I've got your email.
All right. Send me your email address to my email. Okay.
I'll do it.
And I'll get you his name. But he is really into cryptocurrency.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic.
All right. So and actually, I think you would enjoy speaking with you. Really, really.
That is brilliant. I look forward to that.
Okay.
I really am very glad to learn some best practice from others who are leading from the front lines. And you know what? If I may, ahead of wrapping up, if I may remind the CPA candidates that that wisdom that you either adapt or die. Beyond CPA, one has to always maintain an adaptive mindset, not just to the world around them in terms of work, but even on the home front. One moment they are toddlers, the next moment they're teenagers. One moment they're busy maybe fighting with their sibling and for a toy. The next moment they say, Mom, Dad, I'm heading to college. So one has to always maintain that mindset of being in tune with the times and in tune with where the cheese is moving. If you look at the book, Who Moved My Cheese, so that a fourth industrial revolution doesn't happen to you as a CPA, but you are part and parcel of the people that are adapting to shape the profession and shape the industries where they are deployed. So I'm saying keep an adaptive mind, keep a very refreshed worldview as you become brilliant at what you do. Then technology will go to displace you.
When I got out of college, there weren't the different areas to go into. The one thing, and I don't mean to be maudlin, but is that I don't know how much of the new technology I will see. I'm anxious to see where this profession goes, but being that you looked at me and you said, Phil, you're from the fountain of youth, all right? I feel it could be another 20, 30 years. All right, I'll be 128 when I die, okay? Of course, I will look like a prune, you know what I'm saying?
I think there's still more magical stuff in that IT engine that you have.
I can't disclose where it is.
I know, for IP reasons, we understand.
Well, okay, I'll tell you where it is. It's in my village.
Oh, I love it. Then I'm definitely coming out to the US soon.
No, hey, you come out here. I'd love to meet. Oh, by the way, thank you very much for all the kind things you said about my wife and how she's recuperating well. And
I'm so glad to hear.
I told you, you're a gentleman. You're a real gentleman.
You're so kind. We are stronger together.
No, you're kind. Forget about me being so kind. You're a very kind person.
Thank you kindly. Please give our love.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you much success. And I don't think you need any wishing. You will have much success. And
thank you kindly.
And I want to thank Shadrack coming to us from Johannesburg, South Africa, and he is co-founder of Coronet Blockchain. Right? If you want anything to know about him, you can go to LinkedIn. All right, and what would they do? All right, look up your name. All right, Sonny, is there any way of getting his name up so they can see? Sonny, are you there?
I am here, Phil. Sure.
Is there any way of getting his name up on the screen? So if they want to look him up on LinkedIn.
Well, his name will be on the screen when the beginning of the podcast.
Yes,
so they'll be able to look at. They'll be able to look for
all right. And by the way, and I didn't mention this, but Shadrack before the broadcast said, Phil, tell your listeners if they do get to Johannesburg, okay, I will take each one of them out for dinner. All right. And I thought to myself, what a generous this person is. I'm just kidding. All right, just kidding. But anyway, I want to thank everyone who watches this, and I want to thank the people in Atlanta, Georgia. Number one, maybe that's changed, but thank you very much. I try to come up with guests who are personable. That's very important, and have knowledge. Yeah, no one is expecting you to go out after this and start getting into the blockchain area, cryptocurrency. Okay, it's actually going to be one of the big areas. It's finally being accepted, as currency, all right, in this country. And obviously it's in other countries too. So anyway, if you have any questions, you can write to Shadrack, and I'm sure he'd be very happy to answer any questions.
Absolutely.
So thank you everyone for actually watching, listening. And remember, every Tuesday we have a new video, new guest, all right, and new topic. And if there's anything I can show you as far as guests, all right, please contact me and we'll try to get the guests, that we can. All right. All right. Shadrack, good luck to you. Good luck to your family. All right. And I wish you well and stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you kindly. Thank you for your hospitality. Thank you, Sonny. And once again, I love to your wife. I love to your family, Sonny. As they say in Hollywood, to be continued.
Correct. Oh, very good. Okay. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
thank you, Sunny. All right, next
you so
time,
much,
we'll
sir.
see you again for another episode of CPA Review and More.